All right, so today we're doing benchmark percentages and it's going to be lesson 13. So we're going to be dealing with percentages that are numbers that you're mostly familiar with. So we will contrast percentages and fractions. So for now, you are just listening and I'm going to go into a couple very important things. So what you need to know is when we're dealing with percentages and we're dealing with 25%. Now, 25% is 1 over 4, right? So what we can do with these numbers, whether we're dealing with 50% or 75%, those are the percentages you're going to be dealing with today. Now, what the trick is, let me just give you an example. So if we have 1 over 4, right? And I want to know what that percentage is of 16, let's just say. Let's say that it said that. What you would do is you would take 1/4 and you would multiply it to whatever number. So what the book's showing you is this is 1/4 times. Remember that that dot means times. Okay, so 1/4 times, and I'm going to use the example 16. Okay, now you know with multiplying fractions, you just multiply straight across, right? So I'll rewrite it. So 1/4, and I'm going to write times 16. Remember, I taught you to put a 1 underneath, right? So you multiply straight across. So 1 times 16 is 16, and 4 times 1 is 4. So technically speaking, 1/4 times 16 is the same as just dividing 16 by 4. Okay, and your answer would at that point be 4. So you're going to need to know how to do this as we start doing different things. So I'm going to switch up the color and I'm going to give you a second example using exactly what we're doing. And I'm going to focus right here though on the 1/2 and the times whatever number, right? Now remember that the dot means times. So I'll write up here now. So 1/2 times, and I'm going to give the example 12. Okay, now remember when we multiply fractions, you multiply straight across and you need to put a 1 underneath the 12. So this becomes 1/2 times 12 over 1. Okay, so now you multiply straight across and you get 12 over 2. Well, you know that 12 over 2, you divide those. That's the same as just saying 12 divided by 2, right? Or taking half of 12, however you want to look at it. And at that point, you would get 6. So those ones are pretty easy. What you need to know is when you are trying to find 25% of anything, you're taking 1/4 of the number or you're dividing by 4. When you're finding 50% of a number, you're taking half of the number or you're dividing by 2. Now here is where it's going to get a little bit tricky and you're going to get practice with this, but I just want to show you this so you see it multiple times. Okay, so now let's say I have the 3/4 and I'm trying to find the percent of, let's say the number 24. So you would do 3/4 times the 24, right? Now what we've been doing this whole time is we've been dividing by the denominator. Okay, so what would start us out is we would do 24 divided by 4 and we would get 6. Now what we do is we times it by the numerator and you would get 18. Okay, so when you're trying to find 75% of a number, you first divide by 4, then you times by 3. So those are just very important things to know as you're moving forward with percentages. Okay, so 25% of a number is always 1/4. So we would divide by 4, right? That's what I kind of already said. 50% of a number is half of the number. So you would divide it by 2. 75% of a number is always 3/4 of the number. So remember we said that you do divide it by 4, that's the denominator, but then you times it by whatever's on the top, which is 3. 10% of a number is 1/10. You would divide by 10. And pretty much that's just common sense for most of it. This is going to be probably the hardest one for you to remember. The rest of it, I feel like you know. Okay, so let's try these. So we're on page 70. And we're starting out easy. It says, think of at least one thing you notice. So what percentage of each diagram is shaded? Well, this is just normal fractions. You learned this probably in like second grade, right? How many are shaded out of 10? Well, 1, right? Now, remember, I've taught you that if your fraction is 1 over 10, you could divide 1 divided by 10. Or you can just know, well, 10% of 100 is shaded. However your brain works, right? For B, that is 1/2. Now, you need to memorize that half is 50%. That is a number you need to start memorizing. And then C is 3 of the 4. Right? So if 3/4 are shaded, that's 75%. So these are all percentages and fractions that you need to know by today is what they're asking. Okay, so now we're on page 70 and we will get going with these kind of in action here. Okay, so it says how much is 50% of 10 milliliter or 10 liters of milk? I'm sorry. So 50% is half, right? So whenever we do half, I told you in the beginning, we just divide it by 2. I'm sorry, that should be divide. Okay, so we divide by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. How far is 50% of a 2,000 kilometer trip? You would do 2,000 divided by 2. And that's how they got 1,000. How long is 50% of a 24-hour day? Half of 24 is 12, or 24 divided by 2 is 12. And then in general, how do you find 50% of a number? The answer is you take half, and I always just say divide by 2. All right, now how far is 10% of a 2,000 kilometer trip? So 10% is 1/10. Or you divide by 10 is how you can memorize that. So 2,000 divided by 10 is 200. How much is 10% of 10 liters of milk? You would do 10 divided by 10, and that makes 1. How long is 10% of a 24-hour day? It would be 24 divided by 10, and that's 2.4. So how do you find 10% of any number? You divide it by 10. So now we move on to 3. So how long is 75% of a 24-hour day? So remember I told you earlier, 75% is the fraction 3 over 4. So the trick is you divide by 4, and then you multiply by 3. Okay, so 24 divided by the 4 is 6. And then 6 times the top, which is 3, is 18. So your answer will be 18. Now remember that 75% is the hardest one. And it's one that you're going to need to get practice at to get good at. So now B says, how far is 75% of a 2,000 kilometer trip? Now remember that it's 3 over 4, right? So we divide by 4, and then we multiply by 3, the top, right? So 2,000 divided by 4 is 500. And then 500 times the top is 1,500. And now we have C. How much is 75% of 10 milliliters of milk? So remember, we divide it by 4, the bottom. And then because there's a 3 on top and not a 1 on top, like the number half, right? We have to multiply by that. So 10 divided by 4 is 2.5, or 2.5. And 2.5 times 3 is $7.50. So it would be $7.50. not dollars, I'm sorry, just $7.50. Sorry. All right, now 3D. How can you find 75% of any number? So you're just going to write what I've wrote multiple times. So divide by 4, then multiply by 3. Okay, so now you're on page 71, and we're going to be finding a bunch of percents about the number 9. Okay, so 71. So they show you a picture to start you out. 9 is 50% of what number? So your number should be larger than 9, right? Because half of it is 50. So now I need to know, well, what fills up this other box? And the answer is 9, right? But remember that when you're dealing with 50%, that's always a 2, right? So you could just times 2. So 9 times 2, your answer is 18. All right, so now 9 is 25% of what number? So remember, with 25%, you're dealing with a fourth, or the number 4 is how I remember it. So you can do 9 times 4, which is 36. So 9 is 10% of what number? So 1/10, you're dealing with the number 10, right? So 9 times 10 is 90. And I know for most of you, that's just mental math. You know that it needs to make 100%. So that's just kind of obvious. Now 75%, remember that you're dealing with 3/4, right? So you're going to divide by the 3, and then you're going to times it by the 4. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 3 times 4 makes 12. So that would be your answer there. And now this one's probably the hardest one that we'll do. 9 is 150% of what number? Now here's what you need to know. 150 over 100. That's how you would write that fraction. And you would reduce each of these by dividing them by 50. And what you end up with is 3 over 2. So the fraction is technically 3 over 2 that you would be dealing with. So you would just do 9 divided by 3 to get 3. And then you're going to multiply it by the 2 that's in the fraction here, 2. And your answer would be 6. So you're going to join the meet and start the practice.